stealing. Let's go. Okay, little Texas Hold'em.
I'd like Cobra John Grace. I would do that.
All right, that's a great little stand. That's really cool.
Thank you. So, what was it like to jump back into this character that's been over 30 years?
Yeah, 30. It was like 34 years jumping back in. Well, you know, both Billy and I talk about this a lot, that, you know, we were persuaded because these writers knew so much about our character, and they said, you're going to set up season 2, being in episode 10. And I said, well, why can't I be in season one in episode 6 or 7? He said, no, you're setting up second season. And I wanted him to show other sides other than just a badass, you know, because I've done that. And they talked about the evolution of the character. They talked about the vulnerability that he could have. And they did their homework. All the backstory that I created with John Kreese in Vietnam, and why he didn't trust anyone, and why there was no mercy, you know, for the weak, because he lost a lot of friends in Vietnam. As if our boys were not allowed to win in Vietnam. John Kreese was a winner throughout his whole life, and ultimately created Cobra Kai, where the students were not allowed to lose ever. So these writers knew all that, and they persuaded me to come and play, because I could be, and I can't give away too much, but I could be in season 2 a lot more vulnerable and a lot different than just John Kreese. Mercy is for the weak, give me 60 push-ups on your knuckles. You know, that holds to a certain degree, but if you write it into some real vulnerable stuff, it's marvelous for an actor to play. And that's what I was looking to do, you know. And season, you know, hopefully we'll have a season 3, and there'll even be more flashback information then, and they've even mapped out how he became a bully. And hopefully in this season, we'll learn how he got, I thought of a great way of how he got, you know, the name Cobra Kai. But I can't, only because they'll change it. But they came up with it's pretty 60-40. I mean, I think mine was better, but they really thought about that. And they thought about, you know, was he bullied as a kid? We thought about my backstory, because I met with Army Rangers and created a lot of stuff at the beginning of season 2 and wanted to, you know, invent it further and evolve it further into season 3, and they already thought about all of this. They already had this on the ledger of where he came from and why, because they like writing for this character, you know. But, you know, my association with Billy is what's really interesting, because season 2 really just travels the whole emotional gamut of feelings, where a father and son have such a strong relationship, and yet it goes back and forth with the integrity of Cobra Kai always at stake. And it's written eloquently, you know? I remember doing Cagney and Lacey, and I didn't think that anything, after 6 years of Cagney and Lacey, I didn't think anything else would be as well written, unless you were lucky enough to pop in with Aaron Sorkin and go do To Kill a Mockingbird on Broadway or something, you know? But no, these cats, they're there.
Second golden age of television. We really are. Where these just fantastic opportunities. There are many movies every week.
Yeah, there's so much, and it's because, you know, they're making Marvel comic books and the studio system, so we're getting all the influx in the last decade of good material on television with good directors and good writers, nurturing them. So you get the great stuff on Netflix, you get the really good stuff on, and, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I'd love to go, some of these stories are banal and bizarre, but they're really interesting material for the actor and for writers to write, and certainly for the public to see. You know, and I'm a big Western fan. You know, I love Westerns. For me, the whole rejuvenation of the Western would please me greatly, but you have to write it like either like Butch and Sundance, where there's a love affair, or you write it in a very sophisticated form, because unless people are gray, like in the Wild Bunch, unless people are gray, it's not going to hold up. Kids are so sophisticated these days as an audience member, that you really have to write and make it interesting. You know, white hats and black hats don't work anymore in TV or in the movies. You know.
Talk maybe about the process of when they reached out to you to propose, okay, we're going to do the show for YouTube, and we want you to come back to play this character. Did you so much years ago. How did that go down? And what conversations did you have?
Well, we were Dantanas at a restaurant, and they knew everything about our characters. They just knew everything. And when I would throw some things at them, they had answers.
What was your reaction when you first got word that, maybe through your agent or whatever, they said they want to bring you back to do this show on YouTube, and I don't know how long you've been away from.
Well, we occasionally would do conventions, and Billy and I are good friends, and I'd see Ralph every once in a while. He lives in New York, and we were working on material, Billy and I, good material to bring it back but it was a feature film. So we didn't include television in our plan at all, but we were always writing things to bring our characters back. And at one point, we were arrogant enough to write the characters in so we wouldn't have to be liable to Columbia and to them coming into the game and saying, you're using No Mercy, you're using the name John Kreese. We were arrogant enough to think that the public would know us by calling our characters Johnny and Johnny and John, and we would actually create scenarios in our screenplay that we never finished because it was really hard to do, but where the people would know these characters without us mentioning Cobra Kai, without us mentioning John Kreese, without giving away money to the studios because we were basically taking the copyright. We tried to do that for a long time. It was really hard. But the fact that we were arrogant enough to think the public would buy into it, it always amazed me, It always amazed me. But we tried it,
Do you think some of the character maybe development, whether it be Johnny or Kreese or whomever, is it more like a personal journey, or they're adapting to kind of society being different? Because as you mentioned, it used to be white hat, black hat, even white keys and black keys. It was clear it was good and bad. So now that there's a lot more gray, again, did everyone kind of change their sensibilities and personal change, or just adapt it to modern day?
Well, I think the writers are responsible for, because if you think about it, the kids in Miyagi-Do, they have problems. I mean, they've got big problems. They got a love affair looming in that house where, if Ralph found out about it, it'd be big trouble, Okay. So, I think that there is no good or bad, and I think everyone, they respected the dark side so much in this movie, in this series, because Billy is so flawed from the get-go, and he suffers so much that the Miyagi-Do, it's not, I don't ever think of it as being like Miyagi. I never think of it as being as pure as that, because Ralph is combating a whole different world. Just like my character says in episode 1, season 2, I say, I've come back, and I have a conversation with Billy, and I say, I've come back, and society isn't the same. The kids get trophies for just showing up. It's one of my lines. And that's how I do feel. But there is a thing that goes on for Martin Kove that kids who show a great deal of effort in playing baseball or playing soccer, but they're just not that good. Shouldn't they be rewarded somehow for showing the effort? And yet, John Kreese doesn't feel that way. I feel that way. But yet, I really just think that the stars are celebrated. The Johnny Lawrences are celebrated. And so it's a real tricky thing that he comes back into a society that's not the same, because he was out there playing mercenary and, absent from the real world. So it's all evolutionary.
For season 2, the character's a little more fleshed out than maybe in the movies where it was just the black hat and the bad guy. Is it more fleshed out?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The characters are much more fleshed out, and they'll be more fleshed out if there's a season 3. They'll be much richer because you can find out about these people. And the saving grace is we have people that can write this stuff without trying to make it a cartoon, without trying to make, how hard it is writing a sequel, how hard it is. We all have seen sequels that have failed. Godfather is probably the only sequel in maybe a Star Wars that we can remember, and I think that we're lucky enough to have people that can cultivate characters in season 3, in season 4, because they know how faulted the characters are in the show they created.